Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked on Wolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday on the road in Milwaukee. It was a fantastic game. Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell all played great. Jarred Vanderbilt got his first start of the season. There's a ton to talk about in terms of key takeaways from the game, as well as individual studs and duds. The overall game flow from a performance, super impressive. The Wolves led wire to wire. We're talking all about it on the show today. Welcome in. You are Locked on Wolves.
You are Locked on Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Wolves. This is the Locked on Wolves podcast. My name is Ben Beecken. I am host of Locked on Wolves. Of course, Locked on Wolves is part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. In addition to hosting Locked on Wolves, I'm also the co-editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Thank you, first of all, for making Locked on Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, the show is free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as Apple, Spotify, Google, the all-new Odyssey app. Anywhere you like to listen, you can also follow on Twitter at LockedOnTWolves and at BBeacon with two B's, two E's, CKEN. Happy Thursday. Happy post-game podcast. The Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday night in Milwaukee by 5 points. It was a fantastic performance, a ton of fun. The Wolves actually led wire to wire, according to Dave Benz on Bally Sports North. This is the first game in the history of Fiserv Forum that the Bucks did not hold a lead at any point during the game. The Timberwolves literally led this thing wire to wire against the defending champs. Obviously, they weren't at full strength. Obviously, it's early in the season. Caveats still apply. Nonetheless, it was a fantastic and really impressive performance from the Timberwolves. We're going to get into the whole thing today on the show. I want to start with game flow, how the Wolves held on at the end when the Bucks were making a serious charge to overtake them late in the game, which they, of course, never did at any point. And then also key takeaways from the game, which is always, I think, the most important part. What can we take from this game and hang our hat on moving forward, including rotation? The offense looks a little different, all those things. And then we'll close with individual studs and duds and call out some of the players who had fantastic individual performances on Wednesday in Milwaukee. All right, let's start with game flow. So the Timberwolves, of course, are coming off a hideous performance on Monday against the Pelicans at home. You can go back if you want to relive the gory affair that was Monday night. But the Wolves, actually, Saturday wasn't much better offensively, right? The Wolves were held under 100 points offensively both Saturday and Monday. One a win, one a loss, both to a Zion Williamson-less Pelicans team. This is a Milwaukee Bucks team that did not have Brook Lopez. They did return Shemi Ojeleye and Bobby Portis Jr., and of course, Giannis played. They also didn't have Drew Holiday. So, two of their best four players, certainly in Holiday and Lopez, not available, or I should say, probably, two of their best five players. And they weren't full strength. I get that. Still, the Timberwolves offense was phenomenal early in this game. They scored 44 points in the first quarter. The offense was just really, really solid early in the game. One of my big critiques from Monday's performance was the lack of an actual offense, right? The Timberwolves didn't really run much besides a poor transition offense, a poor secondary break into some kind of, lackadaisical haphazard pick and rolls, right? And then there was some isolation from D'Angelo Russell, who really struggled, and Anthony Edwards, who had his hot third quarter when he scored 21 points just in the third quarter on Monday, but otherwise was just kind of, didn't have his best game on Monday, that is. In this game, the Wolves were actually running actions offense that had multiple actions to it, right? So they were running lots of dribble handoffs on the perimeter. They had lots of Towns to D'Angelo Russell, Towns to Edwards dribble handoffs, which is just a more, I think, especially with Anthony Edwards, a more effective way to basically run a pick and roll. And, they did it with D'Lo, and D'Lo is fine because he can sometimes get a good shot off from there more so than he can in the pick and roll. But dribble handoffs are so effective for Anthony Edwards. I talked about this a ton last year during Ant's rookie year, but Anthony Edwards gets downhill, nobody can stop him. And he's a good enough shooter and becoming a good enough decision maker. If you just watch the first quarter, I think Ant had 10 points in the first quarter before he took his first rest. And he scored in a variety of ways. He got to the rim. He stopped at the free throw line right around the elbow and hit a jumper. And he had a couple of really nice assists, both from the perimeter and then while driving. As a distributor in dribble handoff situations, if Edwards starts to take this to the next level and beyond just getting downhill and getting to the bucket and scoring or shooting stopping and popping and shooting a three, if he's able to, and we're seeing this already, but if consistently he's able to stop on a dime and hit the roller in a dribble handoff, or um, you know, pass to the opposite, to the weak side corner to an open shooter, those types of passes, if they become second nature to him, he will be quite literally unstoppable. With his shooting touch from the outside, his ability obviously to get to the rim, his mid-range shooting touch looks improved this year as well, and adding the distribution aspect to his game is just going to be phenomenal. Jarred Vanderbilt got the start in this one, the first game that he started, the first game that Josh Okogie did not start this season, which, by the way, we'll talk about this later, but Josh Okogie did not see the floor for 1 minute tonight. I don't know that that's necessarily something that will be a regular occurrence, but notable nonetheless. Vando started. He basically drew the assignment of guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo, although the Wolves did bring doubles when Giannis caught the ball with his back to the basket. One of my critiques on Vando as a perimeter defender, and we'll talk a lot more about Vanderbilt later, I promise. And as everybody that's a regular listener knows, I have been on Vando now since the Wolves traded for him nearly 2 years ago, a year and 9 months ago, or whatever it was. I thought he was a fantastic acquisition then. I will continue to toot my own horn for saying that at the time and throughout the last year and a half. But anyway, we'll do more of that later, I promise. He's Vanderbilt as a perimeter defender. He isn't quite quick enough laterally to stay in front of some guys, but Giannis is one of the guys who, because Giannis is comfortable playing with his back to the basket, and so a lot of times he'll take the ball in the perimeter and dribble himself into a post up. And Vando's more than fine letting him shoot jumpers, and Giannis actually made jumpers. He made 3 threes in this game. He'd only made 1 in the Bucks' first 3 games of the season. But for the most part, it was at least able to slow him down because Vanderbilt's a big enough and strong enough body and avoided getting into foul trouble too. Giannis got his numbers. He scored 40 in this game and he was fantastic, but he made Giannis work for it and made him make jumpers to do it. And I thought that was a really shrewd move by Finch to put him in the starting lineup and put him on Giannis. All right, rest of the game flow. Karl-Anthony Towns did not attempt a field goal until the 3:30 mark in the first quarter. He made a 3, and that was his first shot attempt of the game. Lots of dribble handoffs. Again, I mentioned that with Ant. This was also prevalent in the first quarter when there were minutes with D'Lo and Patrick Beverley on the floor with Karl-Anthony Towns. And there was kind of a Towns-Russell dribble handoff action, and Russell stopped and kicked it to Patrick Beverley, spacing out in the corner for an open 3. Those types of actions where you can play either Beverley or Russell off the ball, the other one ball handling, and Towns is your screener. That's the sort of thing when they traded for Patrick Beverley, I talked about on the show, that's the thing you couldn't do with Ricky Rubio, right? Rubio, those pieces are not interchangeable. Rubio, 2 years ago with Phoenix was pretty good as a spot up corner 3-point shooter, above average. He was not last year. Patrick Beverley is well above average for his career, and so is D'Angelo Russell. And so those parts are interchangeable. You can play the 2 point guards together and it works. The second quarter, the Wolves started with an interesting lineup: D'Angelo Russell, Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley at the 3, Taurean Prince at the 4, and Naz Reid at the 5. For the most part, it worked. And the Wolves crossed the 50-point threshold at just under 11 minutes left in the second quarter. Then the Bucks went on a 16-2 run after the Wolves had built a 20-point lead. They cut it to a 6-point lead. The Wolves stabilized things. They were up still by 8 at halftime. They were +6 on the boards at halftime, which, by the way, is the margin they finished the game, +6. In the second half, Jaden McDaniels got into the party when it came to rebounding the ball. The Wolves all night, except for that stretch in the fourth quarter when the Bucks made their final push, the Wolves beat the Bucks on the glass. And it was impressive from a team that got slaughtered on the glass by the Pelicans twice, both in the win and in the loss on Saturday and Monday. The Wolves actually extended their lead to 15 to start the fourth quarter. They were still up 14 with 4 minutes left. So in my head, right after watching the game, I was like, the Wolves' fourth quarter wasn't great. You look at the box score, it doesn't look like it was great. They got outscored by what? Overall in the fourth quarter, outscored by 10, 29-19 in the fourth. But they actually still led by 14 with 4 minutes left in the game. So this was a 15-point lead. The Bucks had only shaved 1 point off in the first 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. But that's when the Wolves' offense got stagnant. That's when they had a couple of isolation-type possessions from D'Lo and Edwards. There were some missed shots, and they couldn't stop the Bucks. The Bucks got a series of offensive rebounds late in the game, and a Chris Middleton shot made this a 2-point game, a 1-possession game with 35 seconds left, just under 35 seconds. But then Edwards came down, got one-on-one with Chris Middleton, who's a fantastic and really long defender, took him to the rim, made a left-handed layup, was fouled, put the Wolves up 4, but then he missed the free throw. Giannis came down, got a relatively easy bucket in the paint. The Wolves thankfully didn't foul him. So it's still a 2-point game at that point with just under 10 seconds to play. But Edwards got the inbounds play, was fouled, and made both free throws that time to effectively put it away. And the Wolves ended up winning by 5 after D'Lo made a final free throw down the stretch. So not great in the final 4 minutes of the game overall. But when the one play needed to happen, unfortunately, it got to that point. But Edwards made that play. He made the tough shot through the contact. And that was the biggest singular play of the game. The Wolves held on at the end. Okay, next I want to get into key takeaways from the game. And there were several. I've already kind of alluded to a couple of them in the first part of the show here. So I want to do key takeaways and then highlight some individual performances, look at individual studs and duds. Before we do that, though, let's talk about our fantastic friends over at rockauto.com. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have a computer with access to rockauto.com, both at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why would you choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers now for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they have everything you could possibly need, from brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, to even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Let's also talk about betonline.ag. We're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Use the promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From football to basketball, baseball postseason to NHL, boxing, and UFC, right on down to your favorite Las Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Again, betonline.ag, promo code Locked On to receive a 50% welcome bonus. Okay, let's go ahead and talk key takeaways from Wolves Bucks. So there's a lot of things we could talk about here from this game. This was, again, wire to wire, really impressive by the Timberwolves. So we could take this in a number of directions. Number one, I want to talk about the offense a little bit. I did, I guess, off the top here, just doing more things offensively, right? Instead of simply relying on, and I've talked about this before, but the Ryan Saunders offense going back a year was a little bit more complicated. It wasn't quite the Flip Saunders offense, but there were a lot of different things that they did. And then at times it kind of devolved into the flip side, right? It was a lot of isolation and hero type ball. Um, but the Chris Finch offense, well, there's more exotic sets. It's much more of a read and react offense, right? So it's putting Towns in a position to be the fulcrum of the offense, not exactly how the Nuggets use Nikola Jokic. And I suspect, by the way, that we'll see more sets with Towns as the quote unquote fulcrum in the mid post, high post, at the elbows. I think we'll see more of that as the year goes on. Right now, they're in a more simple, and this was part of my complaint over the weekend on Saturday and on Monday, just not running much. And Chris Finch alluded to this. It basically said it in the media that they haven't spent any time in practice on offense, really at all. It's been all defense because they just kind of figured we've got enough offensive talent. We've got Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Anthony Edwards. We've got guys that can get buckets. As it turns out, you still need to practice it. And we started to see the implementation of some more stuff in this game. Far more dribble handoffs, far more general motion on the offensive end of the floor than we'd seen, at least early in the game. And maybe not so coincidentally when the Wolves scored 44 points in the first quarter. Not coincidentally at all. We saw so much more of this, getting Ant downhill, getting Towns open 3-point attempts. Some of those by design, some he's so good as a trailer in transition, and the Wolves do a good job of looking for him as a trailer in transition. But just more creative offensive actions by the Timberwolves, and that was a ton of fun to watch. Second takeaway, the rotation. This is going to be kind of a continuous thing as we see Chris Finch's idealized rotation maybe start to show itself. And I really think we're going to be talking about this all season because it's going to depend on matchups. He's not afraid to not just put a guy in a box and say, this is your role. I don't think Josh Okogie is suddenly out of the rotation. I think he was just out of the rotation in this game. I think maybe if Drew Holiday plays, maybe he's on Drew Holiday. I bet if they play this game and Drew Holiday plays, Josh Okogie plays in a Wolves Bucks game that Drew Holiday's in. I think if they played again in a week, Okogie would be in the rotation. I bet he's probably in the rotation against the Nuggets on Saturday. The Nuggets have some wings, whether it's Will Barton or whoever else. They've got some guys that Okogie's going to need to guard. The Wolves need another perimeter defender besides Patrick Beverley and obviously Jaden McDaniels. But against the Bucks in this game, they wanted McDaniels on Chris Middleton primarily, and they wanted Jarred Vanderbilt on Giannis primarily. And yeah, Giannis scored an efficient 40 points and had 16 and 7, only 2 turnovers. You look at the line and you think, man, it was all Giannis. He killed the Wolves. Yeah, but they also forced Giannis to take some jumpers, which he made to his credit. He's obviously not a very good 3-point shooter at all, and he was 3 of 6 outside the arc in this game. But they also, Jaden McDaniels limited Chris Middleton to 16 points on 6 of 16 shooting, 1 of 8 outside the arc in this game for Chris Middleton. And I talked in the preview on Wednesday for this game, they couldn't let George Hill or Pat Connaughton go off. George Hill and Pat Connaughton combined to shoot 5 of 18 from the field for just 15 points. The two of them combined. That was well done by the Timberwolves. That's exactly what they needed to do. They let Giannis get his, which is exactly what I was hoping that they would do from a design standpoint defensively. Anthony Edwards said this post game, the guy's huge. You can't stop him. You can't stop Giannis, right? He's the MVP for a reason. A couple years ago, I guess. But just let him score, limit what he can do as much as you can, and don't let anybody else beat you. And that's what the Wolves did. And the rotation was a reflection of what the Wolves strategy was. So no Josh Okogie in the rotation. We only saw 5 minutes of Jordan McLaughlin. That was middle of the second quarter. And it part of it overlapped with when the Wolves let their lead start to lapse. That was when the Wolves actually brought him into the game. I believe he came in for Patrick Beverley to play with D'Angelo Russell, if I'm not mistaken, is when McLaughlin came into the game, like 8.5 minute mark of the second quarter, which I thought was interesting. He didn't record a single statistic. He had 1 foul. That was it. He was a -6 in 5 minutes. So McLaughlin remains kind of on the fringes of the rotation. Okogie was out of the rotation. Naz Reid only played 10 minutes because, again, to this point this season, we've only seen him play in relief of Towns instead of alongside him, which I think is still mostly what we're going to see. But one of the things Finch tried doing last year that I'd always wanted Ryan Saunders to do, and he basically never did, is play Naz with Towns. And again, matchups are going to dictate that. Maybe if Brook Lopez played, we could have seen that, but probably not. I don't think we're there. I don't think the Wolves have played an opponent that would seem to make a ton of sense. But for his part, Naz was great in his 10 minutes. He scored 7 points, had a rebound. He held his own. He had a nice dunk, nice and one bucket in the paint as well. Strong game from him. But I think that 15 to 20, 22 minutes for the trio of Taurean Prince, Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley is about where we're going to live, with McLaughlin and Okogie kind of in and out and on the fringes of the rotation, depending on matchups. I think those are probably the two guys that we might see. There's the top 9, right? It's the starters, which I guess was Okogie until this game. But I think it's the 5 guys who started tonight against the Bucks. And then it's Prince, Reed, Beverley, and Beasley, and then McLaughlin and Okogie are going to be your fringe rotation guys. Depending on matchups, they may or may not see a ton of minutes here moving forward. A couple things here, final takeaways. Knowing your role as a player is super important. I've talked about this on the show before, and there's certain guys that do. Jarred Vanderbilt is one of those guys, and it's what makes him so effective at what he does. He knows his job is to pester the other team defensively, to crash the glass on both ends of the floor. He had 13 rebounds, 7 defensive, 6 offensive rebounds. And to, sit in the dunker spot, get out in transition and do what you can offensively, be decisive in your role, right? Make the quick pass, rotate the ball around the perimeter, find a cutter. Don't hold the ball if you're Jarred Vanderbilt, right? Because nothing good can happen if Jarred Vanderbilt is holding the ball. He's not a jump shooter. You don't want him putting the ball on the floor to try and score. He's a pretty good passer and he's athletic, right? So you want him around the rim or you want him in transition. Vando knows his role, and that's fantastic. I think sometimes that's a concern with Josh Okogie. I talked about that Monday. he started getting a little too comfortable offensively and started thinking, oh, I can, I could, I could put the ball on the floor and get into the paint. No, we'd really rather you not do that, Josh Okogie. We'd rather you be a cutter. We'd rather you get out and transition offensively and otherwise sit in the dunker spot, or maybe, set some screens, and that's kind of your role. And maybe you play at the elbow in some horn sets, and that's what you do. But unfortunately, he tried to do too much. In this game, Jarred Vanderbilt did exactly what the Wolves asked of him. Malik Beasley is another example of a guy who is going to be asked to take on a different role than he has often had in recent years or ever in his career. Well, I guess going back to his Denver days, he did before he got the big contract in Minnesota. But he's going to be asked to be the sixth man type guy now. And that means he's not going to play 30 minutes a game in most cases. And he's not going to score 20 points a game in most cases. He struggled from the floor. He has to this point this season, but he hit 2 late 3-pointers in this game. I think maybe early fourth quarter. And those were important for him. And he's another player who's going to need to continue to figure out what his role actually is. And I think he's on his way. But Vanderbilt's the epitome of that. He gets it. He knows what he's supposed to do. Obviously, Patrick Beverley is a veteran, Taurean Prince. Those guys know what they're doing. Now we need to see Malik Beasley wrap his mind around, hey, instant offense off the bench, just come out firing, which isn't usually an issue for Malik Beasley, but make the extra pass when it's there and just know you're going to play 20 minutes a game and that's going to be your jam right now. And if he can fit into that role, this is going to be a really, really dangerous team. I've talked the last 2 months about how deep this team truly is. People don't realize how deep this roster is. Malik Beasley is going to be a big part of that. And if he sinks or swims, depending on which direction that goes, that's going to have a major impact. Okay. I want to close by talking individual studs and duds and a couple of additional, statistics that stuck out to me. First, though, let's talk about Postmates. Do you smell that? It's a burger. My favorite. There's a burger, cheese, fried onions, fantastic, from a local place that I love to get from Postmates. But you know what the best part is? Not just that I had a delicious burger from a local restaurant in my neighborhood, but that it showed up at my door because I ordered it with Postmates. With Postmates, I get all my favorite foods from the local restaurants in my neighborhood delivered. No leaving the house, and even better, no getting in the car or having to find a parking spot. Postmates isn't all just burritos and sushi either. I can order things like toothpaste and phone chargers on demand too. That's because places like Walgreens and 7-Eleven are also on Postmates. My favorite part? When the app lets me know that my food or items have been delivered, everything is right outside my door. So cool. It never gets old. Just download Postmates on iOS or Android. Find your favorite foods or that one thing you forgot to get from the store and get it delivered on demand. And for a limited time, Postmates is giving just our listeners a little something. New customers will get 50% off your first 5 orders of $50 or more when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your first 5 orders of $50 or more. Max savings of $100 per order. Just download the Postmates app or sign up online. It's super easy. Offer subject to change and taxes and fees apply. Offer valid for 30 days after you add the promo code to your account. Let's also talk about Sweat Block. We've been talking about Sweat Block now for several weeks here on the show. And those are the wipes that stop sweat for 7 days. It seems that people have been listening. We have friends of Locked On who have tried Sweat Block, and they absolutely love it. We have a story here about a high school teacher. He would pit out by 4th period. He'd hear the snickers and whispers from his students. So he started bringing a second shirt to change into between classes. Then he heard about Sweat Block on our program here on the Locked On Network. He tried it and is now hooked. No more snickers, no more second shirt. Straight out of Hollywood, we have a producer who is working on the set of a Marvel movie. Perhaps you've heard of it. She was working 18-hour days for weeks in the Atlanta heat. She heard about Sweat Block, started trying it, and loves it. No more sweaty production days. She even reports that one of the A-list actors uses it, maybe the green one, if you know who I'm talking about. So to stay dry on set and on the red carpet. Another success story about an avid soccer player. He heard us talking about Sweat Block and thought it was too good to be true, but he was always the wettest guy after practice and games, like soaking wet. So he thought he'd give Sweat Block a try. He tried it on his pits. The next practice, his pits were dry while everything else was wet. He says he didn't have to reapply for 9 days, and now he's a true believer. There you go. Locked On listeners loving Sweat Block. You can stop excessive sweat for up to 7 days per use. Doctor created and doctor recommended, and there's a dry shirt guarantee. If Sweat Block doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. And it's not just for your armpits, your chest, back, feet, hands. You can use it anywhere, and I mean anywhere that sweats. If you or someone you care about is dealing with excessive sweat, you have to check out Sweat Block. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with promo code Locked On, or you can pick it up at Amazon and CVS. But again, sweatblock.com, promo code Locked On for 20% off. Sweatblock.com, promo code Locked On. Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about individual studs and duds from this game. And a little bit of a spoiler, I'm not going to pick a dud. I can't. I mean, the Wolves beat the defending champs. They led wire to wire. Nobody really had a bad individual game. I mean, Torian Prince was 0 of 3 from outside the arc. He was fantastic defensively. Jordan McLaughlin didn't do much in 5 minutes, but he only played 5 minutes. There's no naming a dud in this game. I'm instead going to completely cheat on my rules here, and I'm going to name 4 studs because I have to. Number one, D'Angelo Russell. We have to give him some props. He was awful on Saturday. He was awful on Monday against the Pelicans, both those games against the Pels. And actually, outside of that stretch against the Rockets, third quarter, I think it was back on opening night a week ago, he was pretty bad in the first game of the season, too. D'Lo was really good in this game, especially early. 29 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 turnovers. Shot 12 of 25 from the field. He did only make 3 of his 11 threes. He started the game hot and struggled from 3 late. But still, 29 points on just under 50% shooting, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. The Wolves will take that from D'Lo if that's the D'Lo that they get. And also aggressive defensively. There were a couple of really impressive defensive plays that D'Lo made in this one. And again, it goes to his size, his length, he's a smart basketball player. He just has to put forth the effort defensively. And with the scheme the Wolves are using and with how aggressive the vast majority of his teammates are defensively, he just needs to hold his own and, be opportunistic when he gets the opportunity to grab a steal, things like that. And we saw that in this game. Offensively, he was pretty good. Very good, actually. Number 2, Karl-Anthony Towns. This is a weird line for him. 25 points, 5 assists, only 3 rebounds, 3 blocks, and a steal. But he shot 9 of 13 from the field, including 3 of 5 from the three-point line and 4 of 5 from the free throw line. He also had 7 turnovers in this game, but he was also a +7, which tied for the second best mark on the Timberwolves. So I'm going to give him a stud because he was consistently effective in this game, was ultra efficient. Turnovers weren't great. He only was called for 1 foul. And I mean, he didn't complain to the officials at all. And there were a couple of times where the Towns we saw on Monday, or really any other game in his career, would have complained. And I'm not advocating for him to never disagree with an official again, but it was a very clear shift in demeanor that was 100% intentional from Towns in this game. And it allowed him to be more even keel, more just calm in general. And it worked. At 25, 5 and 3, 7 turnovers isn't great, but 25 points on 13 shots, that is efficiency. And this was an impressive performance. And when the Wolves were struggling in the second half, Towns was there. I mean, he had a couple of nice, I guess his 3-pointers, I think, were all in the first half, but he had a couple of nice plays where, Pat Bev got him a nice dunk under the hoop. Towns was in the right spot, setting good screens. I mean, just active offensively, even when it was, and this is what the Wolves fell into a little bit on Monday. D'Lo and Ant both get the ball in their hands and they want to take over late in the game, but Towns is there and he's ready to be part of the offense late in the games. And I want to see that a little bit more moving forward, to see him a little bit more involved in crunch time. But overall, an impressive performance from Cat. He deserves a stud for this game. Anthony Edwards probably wasn't going to get one until the crunch time bucket, but still a solid game. 25 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 9 of 24 shooting isn't great, but it's not horrible. Again, 25-7, 3 assists, a steal, only 2 turnovers in 33 minutes. A little interesting, he only played 33 minutes in this game. Cat played 38. But then again, the Wolves also wanted to make, the Wolves' best bench players are also wings, right? Prince, Beverly, Beasley. So it makes sense that Edwards would take a little bit more of a break. He did only shoot 2 of 10 from outside the arc. And him shooting 10 threes, I would have liked him to get to the rim a little bit more in this game, but he did that when it mattered. He didn't settle for a 3 when they were up 2 with 30 seconds left. He took Middleton to the rack and he scored through contact. So a good game overall from Ant, and the biggest shot of the night. Jarred Vanderbilt is the 4th stud, and truthfully, if these are in no particular order, I would rank him higher in terms of his importance to the game. 10 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Only 1 turnover, which means he wasn't getting the ball in unadvantageous positions, which happened occasionally too much last year when he was overextended. 30 minutes for Vando in this game. I didn't look this up, but that's got to be close to a career high. 10 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, only 1 turnover in 30 minutes, 4 of 6 shooting, made both of his free throw attempts, was simply very active on both ends of the floor. And I have been singing his praises for months. He is such a perfect fit for this Timberwolves team next to Towns. Um, I mean, he brings enough, well, actually, in this case, he's a better fit offensively than Josh Okogie because he's an even lower usage player in the sense that he's not looking for his shot ever. Josh occasionally does, and that can be an issue because he's not a very good offensive player. Vando, again, knows his role. So if he's more valuable offensively, he's a much better rebounder than Okogie, and he's, call it, 80% of the defender that Josh Okogie is on the perimeter, but he can also guard bigs, and he's a little more switchable onto bigger players than Okogie because of his size, because of his length. He's also athletic. Then why not play him instead of Okogie more frequently? Now, I said this earlier. I think Finch will play the matchups much more closely than that. But heavy Vando minutes and probably starting lineup are the things that need to happen. And a reminder, I said this throughout preseason. I thought Vanderbilt would be in the starting lineup. I thought the fifth starter would be Vando. I thought that Beasley would be in the lineup and McDaniels would come off the bench. But this may be the regular starting lineup now that we see with Vanderbilt at the 4 and McDaniels at the 3. And I think it's amazing. The length on the wing, Edwards, McDaniels, and Vanderbilt, the length on that wing, the athleticism, it's incredible. And Vanderbilt was everything he needed to be in this game. I said this last year, there were a number of games where it was like, let's bottle this. This is the perfect Jarred Vanderbilt game. And then you'd have a game where he had the bad Vando game, right? But if he starts and 2 out of every 3 games is the good Vando game, and this is what that is, um, I mean, that's great. That's what you want at the 4. That's what you want next to Towns. If he was like 2 inches taller, it would be a perfect scenario, right? But he is such a great fit next to Towns, and I'm pumped that he got the chance to be in the starting lineup, and we'll see if he's there again on Saturday against Denver. Be a little surprised if he's not, given this performance. A couple of last stats I'll leave you with. I called out Edwards and Russell for struggling from outside the arc. They combined to shoot just 5 of 22 from deep, but the Wolves as a team were just 13 of 45. That's 28.9%. The Bucks were only 27.5%. So neither team shot the ball well from deep. And so that kind of covered up the Wolves issues. And the Wolves did a pretty good job defending without fouling. They made their free throws when they got to the line, and they finished the game +6 in the rebounding category, which is vital to winning games when they struggle to shoot the ball so much from the outside. And I mean, a lot of that's credit to Vanderbilt, right? He led the team in boards with 13. And if you would have told me Cat only gets 3 rebounds, I would have said there's no chance the Wolves are +6 on the boards at the end of the night, but they were. And, Towns rebounding the ball, that's going to need to get figured out. He's got to do more than 3. But I didn't mention this earlier. Jaden McDaniels had 11 rebounds. And that's got to be close to a career high for him too. That's one of the biggest issues with him is his lack of rebounding, generally speaking. But turns out when you get to play a 4 like Vando next to him and McDaniels can slide down to the 3, he becomes that much more valuable and that much more effective as a rebounder because he's not asked to overextend himself to be trying to box out and rebound over much bigger 4s. He can beat his matchup that's a 3 and presumably a lot smaller than a lot of the guys he'd face at the 4. He's going to be a much better rebounder if those are the guys he's matched up against. So that's another, I don't want to call it unintended. It's certainly an ancillary benefit of putting Vando at the 4, sliding McDaniels to the 3 and allowing him to be more effective rebounding the ball there. And I should mention Ant also had 7 rebounds. I guess I said that a minute ago, but for Cat to have the least amount of rebounds of anyone in the starting lineup, that's got to be the first time that's ever happened. But at any rate, really impressive wire to wire win for the Timberwolves. Was just a ton of fun. And, hopefully this leads into a fantastic weekend for the Wolves. They're in Denver, or excuse me, at home to play Denver at Target Center on Saturday night. So we'll of course talk about that on Friday's show. We'll do a quick preview of Wolves Nuggets, check in on where the Nuggets have been so far this year, how they've been playing, their injury situation. And of course, we'll do the weekend post-game pod following Saturday's game, leading into Halloween on Sunday. We'll do the weekend show all about Wolves Nuggets on Saturday, win or lose. We'll do this all again. So, and of course, we'll be back Friday previewing that as well. So be sure, if you're not already following or subscribed to the show, that you do so anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, We're free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as Apple, Google, Spotify, and the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A reminder that Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.